The rain poured down in heavy sheets, turning the roads into small rivers. Amina gripped the steering wheel of her old Honda City as she drove through the outskirts of the city. The wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour, and she leaned forward, squinting to see through the blurry windshield. It had been a long day at the law office where she worked. A case about a family being forced from their home had kept her late, and now darkness had fallen. The city lights reflected in puddles, creating islands of yellow light in the black water. Amina slurred as she spotted flashing lights ahead. A police checkpoint. Her heart sank a little. These random stops were anything but random, especially for women driving alone at night. She pulled over where a young officer waved her down with a flashlight. Rain dripped from his cap as he approached her window. She rolled it down just enough to hear him. "License and papers," he said, not bothering with a greeting. His eyes took in her professional clothes, the stack of legal documents on her passenger seat, the absence of a male companion. Amina handed over her documents. The officer took his time examining them, deliberately slow, letting the rain drip onto the papers. Other cars were waved through quickly, especially those with men behind the wheel. "What's a woman doing out this late?" he asked, tapping her license against his palm. "Don't you know it's dangerous?" "I'm a lawyer," Amina said simply. "I was working late." The officer's mouth twisted into something between a smile and a sneer. "A lawyer? And no driver? No husband to pick you up?" He laughed, looking back at his colleague who stood under the shelter of a small roadside tea stall. Amina didn't answer. She felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. She knew who it was without looking. "Maybe next time bring a man with you," the officer continued, enjoying his small moment of power. "Or maybe we should give you a police escort. Of course, that would require some paperwork." He emphasized the last word, his meaning clear. Amina spotted headlights in her rearview mirror. A white SUV was approaching, slowing as it neared the checkpoint. Unlike the other vehicles, this one had government plates. "Is there a problem with my documents?" she asked calmly. "No problem," the officer replied, still holding her license. "Just concerned for your safety. A woman like you shouldn't be alone. Maybe we should talk more about this." He glanced at his shelter where tea would be waiting. "Step out of the car." Amina didn't move. She just smiled. The officer's face hardened. "You think this is funny?" "Not at all," Amina replied. "I'm just wondering if your checkpoint has proper authorization tonight." The officer's laugh was sharp. "Are you trying to tell me how to do my job?" he asked, leaning closer to her window. Behind them, the door of the white SUV opened. A tall figure stepped out into the rain, not bothering with an umbrella. Even without his uniform, Zain carried himself with unmistakable authority. The regional police superintendent and Amina's husband walked toward them with steady steps. Amina didn't look back. She didn't need to. The change in the officer's face told her everything. First confusion, then recognition, then fear. She simply kept smiling. The officer's face changed from confident to confused to worried in the space of a heartbeat. He straightened his uniform and quickly handed back Amina's documents. "You're free to go, ma'am," he said, his voice suddenly professional. But it was too late. Zain was already beside the car, rain soaking through his crisp white shirt. He didn't look at Amina yet. His eyes were fixed on the young officer. "Officer Khan, isn't it?" Zain asked, though he clearly knew the answer. "Yes, sir," the officer replied, standing at attention now. "Just a routine check, sir." At an unauthorized checkpoint. Zain's voice was quiet but carried weight like stone. "We'll discuss this tomorrow at headquarters. For now, clear the road. You're causing traffic to back up in dangerous conditions." The officer hurried away. Only then did Zain turn to Amina, his stern expression softening. "Are you okay?" he asked, leaning down to her window. "I'm fine," she said. "I could have handled it." "I know you could," he smiled. "That's why I married you." 3 years earlier, their lives had been very different. Amina had just returned home after studying abroad. With her law degree, she could have taken a comfortable job at any international firm. Her parents had begged her to do exactly that. "Why come back to all these problems?" her mother had asked. "You could have a good life overseas, clean streets, regular electricity, respect." But Amina couldn't stay away. "This is home," she had told them. All my legal training should help people here, not somewhere that already has plenty of lawyers. She had joined a small firm that helped ordinary people with their problems, land disputes, family matters, and cases of police harassment. That's how she met Zane. Back then, he wasn't a superintendent, just a young police officer with a clean record in a department where many took bribes. Amina had stormed into the station one rainy afternoon, much like tonight, representing a family whose son had been wrongfully detained. This boy was held for 6 hours without charges, she had said, slamming her file on the desk. His parents were told they needed to pay to get him released. I want to know who authorized this. Most officers had ignored her. Some laughed, but Zane had listened. He asked questions, took notes, and promised to look into it. Amina had thought it was just talk. A week later, he called her office. The officers involved have been disciplined, he told her, and the family will receive an official apology. Amina was shocked. That's unexpected. It shouldn't be, he had replied. It's just doing the job properly. After that, they kept running into each other. More cases, more meetings. She began to notice how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. He noticed how she tucked her hair behind her ear when deep in thought. Their first real date wasn't planned. Both had attended a community meeting about neighborhood safety. Afterwards, walking to their cars in the rain. It always seemed to be raining when important things happened between them. He had asked if she wanted to get tea. 1 cup became 2. The tea shop closed around them. Their conversation about work became stories about childhood, dreams for the future, and shared hopes for their city. Now, standing in the rain at another checkpoint, Zane gestured to his SUV. I'll follow you home. Amina nodded, but before rolling up her window, she said, You know, they won't learn if you keep rescuing me. I'm not rescuing you, Zane replied with a smile. I'm rescuing them from you. She laughed and drove on, watching in her mirror as he returned to his vehicle. The checkpoint was already being dismantled behind them. The next morning, Amina woke to the sound of rain still drumming on the roof. Dark clouds hung low, promising another wet day. She checked her phone and found 3 missed calls from her office and a message from Zane, meeting at headquarters about last night. We'll tell you everything later. She made a quick cup of tea and got ready for work. The small law firm where she worked was in an old building downtown, sandwiched between a bakery and a tailor shop. The smell of fresh bread always filled the stairwell in the mornings. You're late, said Fatima, the office manager, when Amina walked in shaking water from her umbrella. And you look tired. Late night? You could say that, Amina replied, heading to her small office. Any messages? Fatima followed her, notebook in hand. The Raza family called again about their land case. The hearing is next week, and they're worried. And that woman from last month came back, the one whose son was working overseas and stopped sending money home. Amina nodded, hanging her damp coat on the back of her door. I'll call the Razas first, then see the woman. Before she could pick up her phone, it rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello. Is this Amina Khawaja? A man's voice asked. The lawyer? Yes, who's calling? My name is Farid. I was at the checkpoint last night. In the car behind yours. Amina sat up straight. What can I do for you, Mr. Farid? I saw what happened, he said, his voice low like he was trying not to be overheard. That officer does this all the time. My sister faced the same problem last month. She had to pay him to get through. Farid laughed, a short, bitter sound. Report to who? Police investigating police? But then I saw what happened with you, how that senior officer came. My husband, Amina said. Yes, look, there are many of us, shop owners, drivers, regular people, who face this problem. Not just at that checkpoint. It's everywhere. Small bribes, harassment, especially of women drivers. We've tried complaining before, but nothing changes. Amina grabbed a notepad. How many people are we talking about, Mr. Farid? Dozens, maybe more. Nobody talks about it because what's the point? But if someone would listen. I'm listening, Amina said. By lunchtime, her small office was crowded. Farid had brought 3 others, a taxi driver, a college student, and an elderly shopkeeper. Each had stories about the checkpoint and others like it around the city. They target women driving alone, said the student Nadia. or people in old cars who look like they can't afford trouble. Last month they took my license, the taxi driver added. Said I could get it back for 2,000 rupees. I need it for work, so I paid. Amina took detailed notes, asking specific questions about dates, times, officer names when they knew them. What will you do with all this? The shopkeeper asked, watching her fill page after page. Build a case, Amina replied. My husband started an internal investigation this morning, but that only handles one incident, one officer. We need to show this as a pattern. Her phone buzzed with a message from Zain. Officer suspended pending investigation. Superintendent not happy with me. Says I'm making problems over nothing. She quickly typed back, it's not nothing. I have 4 people in my office right now with similar stories. This is just the beginning. When her visitors left, promising to send more people with similar experiences, Fatima poked her head in. What was that about? I thought you were working on the Rosa case today. Amina looked up from her notes, eyes bright with purpose. Something bigger just came up. Remember when I first joined the firm and said I wanted to make real change? Fatima nodded. I think this is it. This is how it starts. For the next 2 weeks, rain fell almost without stopping. The streets turned into rivers, and people moved through the city like swimmers, heads down against the downpour. But the bad weather didn't stop people from coming to Amina's office. Word had spread quickly. Every day brought new visitors with similar stories. A delivery man who had to pay bribes weekly to keep his route. A nurse who faced harassment at checkpoints when returning from night shifts. An old man whose medicine was confiscated because he couldn't pay. Amina created a map on her office wall with colored pins showing every reported checkpoint, official and unofficial. Red pins for where bribes were demanded, blue for harassment, yellow for where people had their property taken. The map grew crowded with pins, mostly clustered around poorer neighborhoods and routes commonly used by women traveling alone. At home, Zain watched her work with growing concern. You need to be careful, he said one evening as she spread papers across their dining table. These officers have friends in high places. So do I, Amina replied, not looking up from her notes. I married one, remember? Zain sighed and sat beside her. I'm serious. The superintendent called me to his office today. Said I'm causing trouble by supporting your crusade. His word, not mine. Now Amina looked up. What did you tell him? That it's not a crusade, it's the law, and my job is to uphold it. He picked up one of her papers, a statement from a woman who had been forced to pay a bribe to get her children's school bus through a checkpoint. But my position only protects us so far. These people have been getting away with this for years. They won't stop easily. Amina squeezed his hand. That's why we need more evidence, not just stories, proof. The next day she called Farid. We need to document what's happening, not just after the fact, while it's happening. Farid hesitated. You want people to record the police? That's dangerous. It's not illegal to record in public spaces, Amina said, and we don't need confrontations, just evidence. Within days, small video clips began arriving on her phone. Most were shaky, filmed secretly from car windows or shop doorways. A police officer taking money and pocketing it. Another demanding a driver step out for questioning while his hand rested meaningfully on his weapon. A female driver being told to call a male relative before being allowed to continue. Amina compiled everything, organizing the evidence by location, officer, and type of misconduct. When she had enough, she took it to Zain. This is bigger than a few bad officers, she told him, showing him the files. It's a system. Zain reviewed everything carefully, his face growing darker with each video. I knew it was bad, but this, he looked up at her. What do you want to do? I want to file a public interest case, not against individual officers, but against the system that allows this to happen. For that, I need your help from inside. Zain was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence spread before him. Being a police officer had been his dream since childhood, not for power, but because he believed in justice. Now he was being asked to challenge the very institution he had sworn to serve. If I help you, he said finally, I might lose my job. If you don't, Amina replied gently, you might lose something more important. The next morning, Zain walked into the superintendent's office without an appointment. He placed a USB drive on the desk. "What's this?" the superintendent asked, not reaching for it. "Evidence," Zane said simply, "of systematic corruption at checkpoints across the city. I'm giving you a chance to address it internally before it becomes a public case." The superintendent's face hardened. "Are you threatening me, officer?" "No, sir," Zane replied calmly. "I'm giving you a choice, the same one I had to make. You can be part of the problem or part of the solution." For 3 days, nothing happened. The superintendent didn't call Zane. No one mentioned the USB drive or the evidence. Life at the police headquarters continued as normal, which only made Zane more nervous. "Maybe he's just ignoring it," Amina suggested as they ate dinner, "hoping it will go away." "Or maybe he's planning something," Zane said, pushing his food around his plate without eating. "Cops know how to wait." On the 4th morning, Zane was called to the superintendent's office. When he arrived, he found 2 other men there, a senior government official and someone from Internal Affairs. "Officer Malik," the superintendent said, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit." Zane remained standing. "I prefer to stand, sir." The superintendent's mouth tightened. "As you wish." "I've reviewed your evidence." "And?" Zane asked. "And I find it concerning, but hardly conclusive. A few officers taking small payments, some rude comments. This hardly justifies the disruption you're causing." The government official cleared his throat. "We understand your wife is collecting statements for a potential legal case." Zane didn't ask how they knew. "My wife is a lawyer. What she does is her business." "It becomes our business," the internal affairs man said, "when it involves police matters." "What exactly do you want from me?" Zane asked, looking at each man in turn. The superintendent leaned forward. "We want you to be reasonable. These checkpoints serve a purpose. They maintain order. Yes, sometimes officers are overzealous. We can address specific complaints. But a public case, media attention, this serves no one." "It serves the people being harassed," Zane said quietly. "People like your wife?" the official asked with a small smile. "One incident and she launches a crusade. Or is this about something else? Perhaps you both have political ambitions." Zane felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. "This isn't about politics. It's about doing the right thing." The superintendent sighed. "Zane, you have a promising career ahead of you. Don't throw it away over this. Take a few days to think about your priorities." Zane understood the implied threat. He left without another word. That night, he told Amina everything. They sat on their small balcony, watching lightning flash across the distant sky. More rain was coming. "They're scared," Amina said. "That's good." "It's dangerous," Zane corrected her. "They know your name. They're watching the office." "Let them watch," Amina replied. "I'm not doing anything wrong. That might not matter." Zane took her hand. "Maybe we should wait. I could work from inside, make smaller changes." "How long would that take?" Amina interrupted. 5 years? 10? And how many people pay bribes in that time? How many women get harassed? We have evidence now and people willing to speak out. But at what cost? Amina was quiet for a moment. "When I decided to become a lawyer, my father told me something I never forgot. He said, 'Justice isn't free. Someone always pays for it.' I always thought he meant the guilty would pay. Now I understand he meant something else." The next morning, Amina went to the courthouse to file the public interest petition. She had 37 sworn statements, 12 videos, and a map showing the pattern of harassment and bribery. She also had something more important, Zane beside her, in uniform. A small crowd had gathered outside the courthouse despite the rain. Farid was there with the others who had brought their stories to Amina's office. News had spread somehow. A reporter approached with a camera. "Officer, is it true you're supporting a case against your own department?" Zane looked at Amina. She nodded slightly. "I'm not supporting a case against my department," Zane said clearly. "I'm supporting a case for my city and its people. There's a difference." As cameras flashed, Amina squeezed his hand. The hardest part was just beginning. The courthouse steps looked like a river that day. Rain poured down, but people opened umbrellas and stayed curious about what was happening. News cameras captured everything. Amina and Zain walking inside with their files, the crowd of supporters who had brought their own stories, and the police officers watching from across the street. By evening, their faces were on every news channel. Police officer stands against corruption, the headlines read. Lawyer and husband challenge checkpoint system. Zain's phone rang constantly. Old friends from the academy. Fellow officers, some supportive, others angry. His parents called, worried about his job. Amina's office was flooded with calls too, from more people wanting to share their experiences. That night, someone broke the windows of their car. It's just the beginning, Fatuna warned when Amina told her the next day. Are you sure you want to continue? More sure than ever, Amina replied, looking at the growing pile of statements on her desk. Breaking my windows only proves we're right. The court scheduled the first hearing in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, life became complicated. Zain was assigned to desk duty, far from his regular position. Other officers avoided him in the hallways. The superintendent called him to his office again. Not too late to withdraw your support, he said, not looking up from his paperwork. Say your wife misunderstood. That you were investigating internally. We can smooth this over. Is that why someone broke our car windows? Zain asked. To smooth things over? The superintendent finally looked up. I had nothing to do with that. But there are people who don't appreciate what you're doing. People with less restraint than me. Is that a threat? A prediction, the superintendent replied, returning to his paperwork. You're dismissed. At home, Zain paced their small apartment. Maybe we should stay somewhere else for a while. With your parents or mine? Amina shook her head. If we run, it looks like we're scared. Like we've done something wrong. We are scared, Zain said, stopping in front of her. I am anyway. Aren't you? Amina looked up from the case files spread across their coffee table. Of course I am. But being scared and doing the right thing aren't mutually exclusive. The day before the hearing, Farid called Amina's office. There's something you should see, he said. Can you meet me at the tea shop near the old market? When Amina arrived, Farid was sitting in the corner, nervously checking his phone. He looked up when the bell above the door jingled. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said as she sat across from him. What's going on? Amina asked. Farid slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a video. My cousin works at headquarters as a cleaner. He took this yesterday. Amina played the video. It showed the superintendent in his office with the same government official who had been there during Zain's meeting. They were looking at a list of names. These are the main witnesses, the superintendent was saying, pointing to the paper. If we can discredit even a few, the whole case weakens. And your officer, Zain, the official asked. Transfer papers are ready. Far Northern District. His wife won't follow him there. Her practice is here. Distance causes problems in marriages. Amina felt cold, despite the tea shop's warmth. She looked up at Farid. Can your cousin testify about this? Show this in court. Farid shook his head. He'd lose his job. He has 3 children. I understand, Amina said, pushing the phone back. Thank you for showing me. That night, she showed the video to Zain. They're going to try to separate us, she said. Transfer you far away. Zain watched the video twice, his face unreadable. They're scared, he said finally. They wouldn't do this if they weren't scared. Amina took his hand. What do we do? The morning of the hearing broke clear and sunny for the first time in weeks. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city washed clean, puddles reflecting the blue sky. To Amina, it felt like a good sign. The courthouse was crowded. People stood along the walls, some faces familiar from Amina's office, others strangers who had read about the case in the news. The judge, an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, looked out at the packed room with surprise. Quite an audience for a preliminary hearing, she remarked. When Amina presented the evidence, the statements, the videos, the map showing the pattern of checkpoints, murmurs ran through the crowd. The police department's lawyer argued that these were isolated incidents, not a systematic problem. The department has procedures for complaints, he said smoothly, which the petitioners have bypassed to create this spectacle. Is that what justice is to you? The judge asked. A spectacle. Before he could answer, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Everyone turned to look. The superintendent walked in, followed by the government official. They took seats in the back row, eyes fixed on Zain. The judge noticed. "Would either of you gentlemen like to address the court?" The superintendent stood. "Your Honor, I'm here as an observer. This case involves my department." "More than that," Amina said, standing as well. "Your Honor, I have evidence that the superintendent has been actively working to undermine this case." She played Farid's cousin's video on the courtroom's display system. The superintendent's face darkened as his own voice filled the room, discussing plans to transfer Zain and discredit witnesses. When the video ended, the silence was absolute. "Is this authentic?" the judge asked. "It is," a voice called from the back. A young man stepped forward, Farid's cousin, the cleaner from headquarters. "I recorded it. They didn't notice me. They never do." The superintendent pointed at Zain. "This officer has betrayed his oath. His loyalty should be to the department." "My oath," Zain replied, standing beside Amina, "was to serve and protect the people, all the people, not to protect a system that hurts them." The judge called for order as the room erupted in voices. When quiet returned, she looked directly at the superintendent. "In light of this new evidence, I'm recommending an expanded investigation into these allegations. Additionally, I'm issuing an immediate order that all checkpoints must be officially logged, staffed by at least one female officer, and equipped with visible cameras." 6 months later, Amina and Zain stood at the same intersection where they had first confronted the checkpoint officer. Much had changed. The unauthorized checkpoint was gone, replaced by a proper traffic monitoring point with clear signage and officers who wore visible identification badges. One of them was a woman. "Officer Parveen," Zain greeted her. "How are things?" "Good, sir," she replied. "No incidents this week." "And the complaint box?" She pointed to a locked metal box with a slot on top. "Two so far. Minor issues. We're handling them." As they walked back to their car, Amina took Zain's hand. "Do you miss being on patrol?" Zain had been promoted to head the new accountability division, responsible for monitoring checkpoints across the city. The superintendent had been reassigned after the investigation revealed more extensive corruption. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but this work matters more." "Was it worth it?" Amina asked. "All the trouble, the threats, nearly losing your job." Zain stopped walking and turned to her. In the distance, they could see the courthouse where it had all come to a head. The sun was setting behind it, turning the windows to gold. "Ask her," he said, nodding toward a woman driving past the checkpoint. The officer checked her license briefly and waved her through with a respectful nod. No demands for money, no harassment, just doing the job properly. The woman caught Amina's eye as she drove past and smiled, not the tight, nervous smile of someone enduring harassment, but the relaxed smile of someone going about their day without fear. "That's why we did it," Amina said softly, "and why we'd do it again."